So when we redid our kitchen, we have this beautiful oak worktop that we got fitted by the builders, because at the time we didn't have the bottle to attend that myself, or the tools at the time. But we had a load of offcuts. So basically this next project is going to be to turn this big chunk of oak that we've got as an offcut into a big square tray for drinks and biscuits and snacks and stuff for evenings, that we just put on the puff and away we go. See how we get on. So I have a rough idea of what I want to achieve from this. The first thing I need to do is square it off. So I've started marking out and measuring what I want to be the right size, make sure that it falls within one of the slats so that it looks even and symmetrical. So then we can then start hollowing out the middle, which is the bulk of the work, to be honest. So first off, we need to mark out a square. So to start off, we're going to find one of the straight edges. These ones are obviously the ones that are pre-cut, so I'm assuming based on the fact that DIY Kitchen has supplied it nice and straight, that's going to be a straight edge. So I'm going to use my set square, nice sharp pencil. I'm going to start marking out a squared off line in this corner, and we're going to do the same for this side. Keep the pencil nice and level. We can do that up here as well, because I've already marked out where my measurements are. So, couple of things to watch out for though. These ends are obviously ones that the builders have cut with, so they may not be square, and they're not in this case. So I've had to go up to this corner here, I've had to go right into the corner to make sure that when I go square, it will go and square off on that side, so I can get the router. That will be a diagonal cut, or what looks like a diagonal cut, but it's not, it's actually straight. So thanks builders, it's always a pleasure. Right, so now you can see that I've marked along this line here. This one is 58.5 centimeters or 585 mil, which is brought into line with the width, the maximum width I could get whilst landing on one of these lines, which is what I'm wanting to take out. So otherwise, if I'd cut off the maximum amount, I would have got an extra centimetre out of this. But then it would have left a really thin slither on here, which probably would have caused a bit of weakening and wouldn't have looked as good because it wouldn't have been symmetrical, and I love symmetry. So, and then obviously this is our straight edge, we're keeping this one, and then the other end, that's just squared it off. I've marked it out nice and heavily so that I can see it when I'm using a router, and I will cut that using a straight router to give me a nice square. I'm going to start by using one of the straight blades, so either 7, 8 or down into 1 or 2, just because they give you a straight cut, and that'll give us the square outline that we're after for our tray. So as you can see on this edge, my router has a maximum cut depth of about 30 mil, so there to there. So I had to flip over the wood in order to accommodate the 40 mil wood. So on this one, I've not done a very good job on that one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my plane out instead, because that should give me a nice flat finish along that edge at that point. And probably need to be careful around this edge if I use plane on it, because it'll chip the edges because of the fibres of the wood. Like this edge will be fine because you're going in line with the wood. The other edge, not so much. So we'll see how that goes today. As you can see here, the router didn't line up, messed that up a little bit. So I thought in hindsight we could have used a bit of a jig in order to get the right spacing. But I'm going to just plane along the edge of that so that I've got a nice clean edge. So now I've got my edges all nice and smooth. I'm going to plane them down. I'm going to start marking out the top surface. So I decided the sort of outside bit's going to be about 15 mil. So I'm going to draw a square round 15 mil inside the edge. And I'm going to start my router in that. So obviously getting a set square, measuring
15 mil, nice and simple. I'm just using a straight edge. Draw on those.
I've specifically bought some new router blades. Don't know how good they're going to be, but they are. They're called tray blades, so they've got like a flat edge, which is like rounded at the corners. So I bought a load of these, so that I can use them to my heart's content, and hopefully, even if they go blunt, I've got some spares. And we're going to take out the middle of the tray with this, which we've got quite a lot of quite hard wood to take out, so I might need more than one of these. So I think at the moment we're going to use the depth stop to stop it going too deep, and if we keep that consistent and we tighten it up and don't move it, then I'm hoping that that will give us a nice consistent gradient across the bottom of the tray. So fingers crossed. When I started doing the routering from side to side, I started going across the grain, but I didn't realise this until later on. You'll see in a minute that it switches to not being able to see the little squares on the end. This made it a lot harder, so I'd advise to start from the beginning. I'd probably do a circuit around the whole thing at full depth, maybe a circuit inside that, and then I'd probably go back and forth along the grain the whole time. It'd make it a lot easier, and it'd probably make it a lot smoother as well. So this is the jig I've made. This should fit in to allow me to get into the corners. So as you can see, I've finished routing out the middle of this. Should be able to sand that, or at least like plane the back side of it to flatten that out, get rid of the lines. But I've got the jig to make sure that this goes square. This is so that I can rest the router on it, so that we can get a nice flat cut on that. Now you can see this one has been cut. It's cut all the way along this line here. It's reached that line, and now the jig should mean that that hole there is where the new cut plummets into, to follow along that line there, all the way to the end, and then we can repeat. As you can see, there's a lot of lines left by the router, so we're going to hit that with a sander now, and we're going to just keep going over this and over this until it's smooth. And when I say a lot of sanding, it did take a lot of sanding. I've cut all this video back, but it was a lot. Okay, so you can see I've got it looking quite smooth. It's looking good, but I can still feel a couple of dips. So I can basically just draw little circles around bits that I can feel that there's a bit of an issue. I can see there's a little circle there. And then check all the nice rounded corners, which I'm going to run the sander over. And then we should be good to start the oiling. So now I've got it to the point where it is all lovely and smooth. I can feel some sort of dips, but to be honest, I don't think that's going to cause any issues. I've sanded it, and now I'm going to do the first coat of oiling. So I'm going to be oiling with this Osmo Pollux oil. I've used it for all of the doors in the house. I've used it for the worktops, and I'm even using it for the table that I'm in the middle of sanding. So basically it does everything. It's like organic, and you can use it for like food and like preparation services, all sorts of things, kids toys, the works. It's all natural. It's made from oil and wax, so apparently it makes it really good. I found it to be really good, easy to put on. Just put it on really thin. Now you can see it's got a really thin layer. You can barely see it. You can only see the reflection. But that's the key to it. It then absorbs it really well. And after this, we're going to sand it with some fine grained sandpaper, and then we're going to go again with the wax. And because this first coat of the oil brings out the grain, so you can sand it and get a much finer finish with the second coat of oil. So sanding after the first oil, I chose to do by hand, just so that it would be a lot more even and take less oil off, but it's still smooth. So I've now gone over it with a fine grained sandpaper. That's looks a bit paler than it was, but as soon as we've feels very smooth, and as soon as we've oiled it on the second coat, it'll look absolutely beautiful. Like I said before, it's all about really thin layers of this. It really does soak in nicely, and it will dry absolutely beautifully as long as you just keep it thin. There should be no pools on top of it at all. If you see any pools, just go over it and spread it out. So this is it, the final tray in situ after a couple of days to dry. Looks good. So previously an offcut of worktop, now a lovely tray for our living room.